let's talk Jinx. A weekly Jinx video we do every Wednesday about anything to do with Jinx, as well as this video acts as a weekly discussion thread on the Jinx subreddit, Our League of Jinx. And usually every 2 weeks we talk about the patch, changes to Jinx in that patch, changes that might affect Jinx, and simply have an AD carry tier list. But for this video, because the bot lane and the preseason is so chaotic, what we're instead going to do is go over several opinions of different Rioters about the bottom lane actually. For something of a pseudo AD carry tier list, because of the chaos right now, what I should basically tell you is, hey, if you want to play in the bottom lane, and you want to play AD carry, basically play things like Jhin, Misfortune, Ezreal, Lucian, Draven, or play a mage like Heimerdinger, even Mordekaiser, but Karthus, Yasuo even. Play those kind of things. If you play any of the other AD carries, play them because you love them, not necessarily because you want to win. But with that being said, first and foremost, we're going to start with August's opinion. August Browning, aka Riot Jinx Lord, aka the kit designer for Jinx. Again, this is their opinion, not 100% what they're going to be doing to AD carries, but it is an interesting watch, and it is kind of long. It is about like 4 minutes, I believe. I'll try and trim it down in editing if I can, but here we go.
But I don't think they could have won if we had just held out long enough. That said, Jinx needs more power late game. She's too weak. We need to buff Jinx. She can't keep up with the state of today's hyper carries. MR buffs are fine, get jinxed, but like, I don't think that's the problem. I don't think the problem with crit 80 carries is that they instantly die to Brandon lane. In fact, they probably should do that. I think the problem with crit 80 carries is it takes them 3 items to do anything, and before that they're useless, and if they don't get their 3 items before everybody else, they're also useless. So, what I would do is like, buff their ability to scale fast. Like basically say it's like, hey, if you do really well on these characters, you're gonna get some items, you're gonna spike hard, and you're gonna murder everybody. Compared to say like a Lucian, who spikes at 1 item or 0 items. I feel like crit 80 carries should like, I don't know. Like as an example, like MR can help, it'll make it so Brand doesn't kill you. But it's just like, I think that like a Jinx should be favored to lose, but if she gets ahead, she destroys everybody. But how it feels right now is if you get ahead on a hyper carry, you stay even. Whereas I'd rather if you got ahead, you just kill everyone. I think that's a better way to go about it, personally at least. Magic resist will do something, it'll make them lane better, but like, I don't know how much magic resist you need not to instantly die to Brand, and you're still going to have scaling such that you need 3 items to do anything, and again, I think it'd be better if like we did things like buffed base attack speed, buffed steroids that they have that multiply with items, basically just like make their like, their 2 item, like when they have 2 items, just make them a lot stronger. It's okay if 1 item champs exist. If you're a hyper scaler, you should be weak at some point. Screw you. Sorry, like if you want to pick Jinx, sorry, sometimes you just lose the game because you didn't turn on. I don't actually care about that personally. I think like sometimes you pick an 80 carry and you don't turn on and you lose. Good job. If you want to take a scaler though, you should be able to expect to turn on reasonably if you do well. Which I think is what's really, really hard right now. It's like, I feel like as an 80 carry, you can do well and you don't turn on. Like that's what I think is bad. Like this is why like Vayne I think is classically been a really fun champion. It's like Vayne in the past is like spiked to 2 items, but like a Vayne player knows when she's doing well, and then when she in the past when she was doing well, she'd like crush people. Anyways, that's my feeling on it. It's slightly different from the other opinion. Basically, I don't think we should just make them all early game champions. I just think we should make the late game champions turn on hard if they get ahead. And I don't mean late game, I mean like, you can kill everybody at 20 minutes if you get ahead on one of these characters. That's my thoughts at least.
What's interesting about this specific opinion for like the future balance of like crit 80 carries, if this was going to be the direction that we're going to be taking, is what he's basically saying in short is, hey, what if crit 80 carries were kind of always in a losing matchup? If Jinx was always in a losing matchup against other 80 carries. But if you got a lot of kills and you snowball, you could snowball super early because of that, you know, balance of, hey, you were in a losing matchup. You actually are pretty squishy, you're weak earlier, but you somehow got not only even, but a lead. And now you get to snowball out of control with it, even though it's not late game. Like, you shouldn't have to wait late late game just because you're a late game champion. If you got some sort of lead on him, you should be able to snowball. With Jinx specifically, he's also on the mindset of, hey, it maybe is time to bring back the Season 5 rockets that used to make Jinx super powerful in terms of pro play specifically, because, you know, things like Kaisa and other things exist that didn't exist now that might keep Jinx more in check than she was back then. So, with that being said, the next opinion we're going to be talking about is Meddler's quick gameplay thoughts. We did do a video over this, so I will summarize this one briefly by saying Meddler's thoughts is, what if they gave AD carries more starting magic resist to kind of survive things like Brand and such more often. Something August kind of touched on in his video a bit as well was, you know, Brand and, you know, mage supports and maybe mage carries, the problem is they kind of blow up AD carries a bit too easily. Even though it's supposed to be a weakness of the class to have a weaker lane and be able to shut them down in lane, maybe put that snowball behind track, right? Like take that Jinx, put her so far behind that she's not going to be snowballing or doing anything until at least 45 minutes, and the game's not going to last 45 minutes, so she's effectively useless. Well, maybe they're blowing up and being a bit too brittle right now. Like they're too weak in terms of that kind of a matchup. AD carries for the longest didn't even scale magic resist until I believe Season 6, where they started giving them like minute bits of magic resist per level, because that is supposed to be a weakness of the class. It is supposed to be something we're supposed to struggle with because of how much power we're allowed to have if we scale and stuff like that. So I will say that there's a little bit of my own opinion mixed in there, I'm sorry, but Meddler's initial idea thinking was like for Jinx and Tristana and things like that, give it more starting magic resist. Make the lane survivable if they play it right, but now obviously, you know, eliminate that weakness of being bursted by like mages and such like that. So the final opinion I want to talk about, and I want to stress these are all opinions so that way you don't come at these Rioters like from the left side or rude or anything like that. These aren't things that are guaranteed going to be happening. Yet again, I want to emphasize that these are their opinions. Again, opinions. But it's still interesting, and I'll talk about why I think it's interesting all of them have these different opinions after I read this last one by Captain Gameplay. Fortunately, over on Twitter, SpiderX30, the god amongst men, like I keep saying, you should be following them. They're like basically an unofficial writer with a lot of insider knowledge that they're allowed to leak, and it's great. What they had from Reddit, actually, Captain Gameplay's thoughts on AD carries and marksmen in general, but again, this is their opinion, and it's also about marksmen overall, not really crit-specific AD carries. But it's still interesting, especially if you are watching this video and you're not even an AD carry player, but you kind of want to get in on the conversation. I think this opinion allows you to have an angle to come in on the conversation. So here we go. Marksmen are systematically overpowered. That's going to be true of a role that is functionally mandatory to the game. Yes, there are some cheese counters, but they are seen as cheese. If there were actually accepted counters to them, we would see pros adapt, then literally bench themselves and wait out until we make their role OP again. Looking at you, Reckless. And there are also really good reasons we keep them overpowered. They create a very understandable game flow for all players with inevitability. They will win the game if not dealt with. That said, marksmen have low agency. Agency is a measure of how impactful their own actions are in determining their success, and I strongly suspect this is what marksmen actually complain about. They got this weird conception that they are supposed to be the carries, AD carry lol, but that's literally the opposite of what they are. The more reliable your output is, repeatable range, unmessable DPS, the less agency you can have. Really, you can view every ability as a way to buy agency, and the more unreliable, missable, dodgeable, high cost, difficult to position, or long cooldown your ability is, the more agency you can buy. And since marksmen put the majority of their power budget in a very reliable ability, auto attacks, they can buy the least agency. Imagine how miserable a fight would be if marksmen had the most agency. You can't outplay an auto attack. You can't wait for it to be on CD or dodge it, and therefore the auto attacker can't really outplay with an auto attack. Anything you try to do to stop this, the marksman would negate because they have higher agency. Every other role must have agency over them, or they reliably lose because marksmen are reliable. So as long as their AAs consume a majority of their power budget, they're functionally very powerful cannon minions, not carries. Carries are the players who do something proactive that wins games. Definitionally, something that requires high agency, like Malphite ulting 5 people. This is made worse by how well marksmen scale with gold, which just means they need to be weak early game. Some games snowballs and players tilt and get mad at teammates. Mistakes can easily compound to functional defeat before they get enough gold. This effect is generally sharper the further away from the coordinated professional play you get, especially with flaming teammates in games, something I assume that never actually happens in professional matches. I would go as so far as to say that a significant amount of our players should probably not even be playing marksmen at their MMR, since they and their teammates simply can't play around them well enough. Now, I will say one of the things that I wouldn't say really disagree, but I would word differently, is the idea that marksmen aren't carries. I will say that I think that, of course, it's in the name, so it's like AD carries, they should carry, that's in the name, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going from that angle. What I would disagree slightly on is I do think AD carries, because they're reliable, actually should be looked at to be able to carry a game. However, it shouldn't be a guarantee that just because you're playing AD carry, you carry the game, if that makes sense, right? Like, it doesn't really conflict with their opinions per se. It's just I would worry maybe a little bit, well, maybe it does because they said they aren't carries. But I'm saying they are carries, but they shouldn't be reliable carries. And there's this idea that because, you know, carries in the name, that we should, like, automatically, reliably always be able to carry. I think the reliability should mean that we should be able to carry, but not that it's automatic, right? So if we're not carrying, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing either, right? Like, we're just reliable. Maybe someone else carries. One of the things that I also will mention is they are talking about marksman kind of in general, rather than like crit AD carries versus lane AD carries. Because one of the things I think that's interesting about their opinion when it comes to if you divide it like that, is some of the more lane bullies do have a bit more agency because, look, they're not really centered around their auto attacks outside of like Lucian. He kind of is, but he's a spell slinger with some auto attacks. Draven, while he is centered around his auto attacks, it's about the axes specifically, right? When you look at Jhin with the reload, he has to reload, he has to play around that forced shot. So against tanks and stuff, he has a bit more difficulty. So that's kind of the idea right there. With crit AD carries, you're just auto attacks, right? With Jinx, it's auto attacks. Unless you're me, who's an idiot and plays things like lethality Jinx and other kinds of play styles to make other parts of her kit more useful, basically you're playing around auto attacks. That's all you need on those kind of champions, and that's why they have the lowest agency. One thing I would like to challenge and some food for thought is the idea that auto attacks can't be countered. There are items in the game that do specifically are made to counter auto attackers. I think the problem is maybe they're either A, bit too weak, or B, not really appealing to anything other than tanks. So if you're a diver or mage or something like that, assassin especially, you probably don't really want to build them because they don't really have a place in your kit. And I think that maybe is more of the problem around there. Like, there are things that maybe just aren't good things, and maybe they need to be better things, right? Because, for example, you can build 6 Ranwood's Omens, and in that case, crits will only crit for 75 damage, but who wants to kind of really do that, right? So that is some food for thought I want to interject. Not necessarily that they're wrong, but just something I want to kind of put in there. So there's that. One thing I will say about all of this is why I like all 3 of these opinions, actually, even if I don't fully agree with all 3 of them. It's just that it means Rioters are actually thinking about the AD carry role. And not even for like a quick fix, they're thinking about like long-term stuff. Even though this is all their different opinions, they're not like all the same, they're not all like on autopilot, they all have actually deep thoughts about the role, meaning in the future for Jinx and other AD carries, it will be interesting to see what they come up with going forwards. So man, this was definitely a longer video than usual. I apologize kind of, but this is all good stuff. All 3 of these people had good opinions in my opinion, or at least something worth discussing about. So that's what today's video is going to be. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Once again, remember that these were all opinions of these people, so do not go flame them. Please do not go hit them up and like attack them for their opinion. Even if you disagree, which is totally fine, please be civil about your disagreements then if you choose to engage with these people about these opinions that were mentioned in this video. So, I don't know which video will be next, because life can have a lot of kinks. So until next time, take care. GG, get jinxed. Thank you for watching, and enjoy pizza responsibly.